Welcome back to Mr. Midnight. I'm your host, and tonight we're talking about Alaska. Now, Alaska is beautiful, right? Mountains, northern lights, wild animals. It's the kind of place people dream about visiting. But here's the thing nobody talks about. More tourists go missing in Alaska than anywhere else in America. And I'm not talking about people who just got lost and were found a few days later. I'm talking about people who vanished and were never seen again. Tonight, I've got 8 real stories for you. These aren't made-up horror movies. These are actual accounts from real people, tour guides, vacationers, local workers, people who saw things in Alaska that they can't explain. Things that made them realize the wilderness up there isn't just dangerous because of bears or cold weather. There's something else going on. Some of these people barely made it out alive. Others, well, you'll hear what happened to them. If you're new here, welcome to Mr. Midnight. This is where we talk about real horror stories that actually happened. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a video. All right, get comfortable. Turn down those lights. My name is Detective Sarah Chen, and I've been investigating missing persons cases in Alaska for 12 years. I work for the Alaska State Troopers, specializing in tourists who vanish in our wilderness. Most people think Alaska is just pretty mountains and northern lights. They don't understand that we lose more tourists per capita than any other state. The official reports blame exposure, bear attacks, or people getting lost. But after what I discovered last winter, I know the truth is much worse. In 12 years, I've worked 847 missing tourist cases. Most we solve within 48 hours. We have 2 people. People get turned around on marked trails or their car breaks down on a back road. But 73 cases remain officially unsolved. These aren't random disappearances. There's a pattern that nobody wants to acknowledge because it sounds impossible. I became a cop because my sister Lisa disappeared during a family vacation when I was 16. She was hiking with her boyfriend near Denali and never came back. The official report said bear attack, but they never found her body or any evidence of an attack. I spent my whole career trying to understand what really happens to people who vanish in the Alaskan wilderness. The case that changed everything started on February 14, 2024. A wilderness guide named Pete Morrison walked into our Fairbanks station, half dead from frostbite and exposure. He'd been missing for 6 days with 2 tourists from Anchorage, Tom Bradley, 31, retail worker, and Jennifer Walsh, 26, hairstylist. Pete claimed they'd been attacked by some kind of creature, but he was clearly suffering from severe hypothermia and psychological trauma. His story made no sense. It walked on 2 legs, he kept saying, his frostbitten hands shaking as he tried to drink coffee. 12 feet tall, covered in white fur. It was smart, detective. It used tools. It hunted us like it had done this before. Pete had been guiding tourists for 18 years with a perfect safety record. He knew these mountains better than anyone. But trauma can break even experienced people. I assigned him to get medical treatment and started organizing search teams for his missing clients. What we found at their last known campsite bothered me. Their gear was scattered like they'd left in a hurry, but there were no bear tracks or signs of animal attack. Instead, we found something that didn't match any animal in our wildlife database. Massive footprints in the snow, nearly 3 feet long and humanoid in shape. Our wildlife expert, Dr. James Kozlov, had never seen anything like them. These prints show a bipedal creature weighing approximately 800 pounds, he told me while we photographed the evidence. The gait pattern suggests intelligence. It's walking deliberately, not wandering randomly like a confused animal would. The tracks led into deep wilderness toward a mountain region that most guides avoid. When I asked local hunters about the area, they got quiet and uncomfortable. One old-timer, Frank Urich, finally pulled me aside. My grandfather used to trap up there in the 1,940 seconds, he said, looking around to make sure nobody else could hear. He said there were things in those mountains that weren't quite animal and weren't quite human anymore. Things that had been there since before the Ice Age. I thought Frank was just repeating old legends until I started digging through our cold case files. In the past 20 years, we'd had 17 missing tourist cases in that exact region. All involved small groups who'd hired local guides. In every case, Either the guide survived with stories about creature attacks that we dismissed as trauma-induced hallucinations, or entire groups vanished without a trace. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. Missing hikers, campers, and hunting parties, all in the same 50-square-mile area, all during winter months, all with similar evidence left behind, destroyed campsites, strange tracks, and survivors babbling about impossible creatures. I decided to investigate personally. Against department policy, I took a week of vacation time and hired a local guide to take me into the area where Pete's clients had disappeared. My guide was Maria Santos, a tough woman who'd been leading wilderness expeditions for 15 years. "I've heard the stories," she told me as we loaded our gear. "But I've never seen anything that couldn't be explained by natural causes. Bears, wolves, sometimes people just make bad decisions and die from exposure." We hiked in on the same trail Pete had used with his clients. The February cold was brutal, -30 degrees with wind that cut through every layer of clothing. But the weather wasn't what bothered me. It was how quiet everything was. No bird sounds, no small animals moving in the trees, just the crunch of our snowshoes and the wind. On our second day, we found the cave system Pete had described. It was hidden behind fallen rocks and ice, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. Maria wanted to turn back, but I needed to see what was inside. I was carrying my service pistol, pepper spray, and a high-powered flashlight. Standard equipment for investigating remote locations. The cave was bigger than I expected, stretching back into the mountain much farther than our lights could reach. But it wasn't empty. Someone or something had been living there for a long time. Animal hides were stacked against the walls. Crude tools made from sharpened bones and wood, and scattered across the floor were items that made my blood run cold. Human belongings, backpacks, clothing, hiking boots, cameras, all from different time periods, others were port. Some looked recent, others were old and weathered. I recognized some items from our missing person reports. A blue jacket that belonged to a hiker who'd vanished in 2019. A distinctive red sleeping bag from a case I'd worked in 2021. But the worst discovery was a collection of driver's licenses and ID cards arranged on a flat rock like trophies. 17 different people, all tourists who'd been reported missing over the past 20 years, including Tom Bradley and Jennifer Walsh, Pete's clients from last week. "Jesus Christ," Maria whispered, her voice echoing off the cave walls. "What kind of animal collects human IDs?" That's when I realized we weren't dealing with an animal at all. We were looking at evidence of a serial killer who'd been operating in these mountains for decades. Someone who lived in the wilderness full-time, preying on tourists who ventured too far from civilization. I was photographing the evidence when Maria grabbed my arm. "Detective, we need to leave. Now." She was pointing her flashlight toward the back of the cave. Something was moving in the darkness. Something big. The thing that emerged from the deeper tunnels destroyed every assumption I'd made about serial killers. It stood 12 feet tall, covered in thick white fur, matted with dirt and ice. Its arms were longer than any human's, hanging down past its knees. But the face was the worst part. Almost human but wrong somehow, with yellow eyes and teeth too large for its mouth. This wasn't a person who'd gone crazy and started living in the wilderness. This was something that had never been human at all. It looked right at us and made a sound that was part growl, part human voice, like it was trying to remember how to speak. Then it picked up a crude spear from beside the wall and started walking toward us. I emptied my entire clip into its chest. 15 rounds of .40 caliber ammunition. The bullets hit, but they barely slowed the creature down. The thick fur and fat underneath absorbed most of the impact. It looked down at the bullet holes, then looked back at us. And I swear, it smiled. Maria and I ran for the cave entrance, but rocks started falling from above. The creature was smart enough to trap its prey. We squeezed through a narrow gap just as boulders blocked the main entrance. We could hear the thing moving inside the cave, trying to dig its way out. We ran through the snow for 6 hours straight, not stopping until we reached our base camp. But when we got there, we found our supplies scattered and our tent torn apart. The creature had circled around and reached our camp ahead of us. It hunted us through the mountains for 3 days. Maria knew these trails better than almost anyone, but the creature knew them better. It would appear ahead of us at places where we had to rest, forcing us to change direction. It was hurting us, driving us deeper into the wilderness where nobody would ever find our bodies. On the third night, Maria couldn't run anymore. The cold and exhaustion had broken her down. I was ahead scouting our route when I heard her scream. When I came back, she was gone. I followed the drag marks in the snow to another cave, but I was too late. The creature had Maria pinned against the cave wall, feeding on her while she was still alive. It was keeping her conscious, taking small bites and letting her heal slightly before feeding again. She was begging me to shoot her. That was the hardest decision I've ever had to make as a police officer. I made it back to Fairbanks 5 days later, nearly dead from exposure and trauma. But instead of reporting what really happened, I lied. I said Maria had fallen through ice on a frozen stream and drowned. I said I'd spent days trying to recover her body before giving up and hiking out alone, because who would believe the truth? A 12-foot-tall creature that's been killing tourists for decades? A thing that collects human identification like hunting trophies? Even I had trouble accepting what I'd seen with my own eyes. But the evidence was undeniable. I went back through every missing tourist case from the past 30 years and found the pattern I'd been missing. The disappearances weren't random, they were systematic. The creature was hunting specific types of prey, these small groups of tourists with local guides who knew the area well enough to lead them into remote locations. It was farming us, taking just enough people to feed itself without attracting too much attention. The guides who survived weren't lucky. They were left alive intentionally to spread stories that would be dismissed as trauma-induced hallucinations. Perfect cover for a predator that needed to stay hidden. I tried to warn other law enforcement agencies, but without concrete proof, nobody would listen. A detective claiming to have discovered a man-eating cryptid? That's career suicide. So, I started documenting everything unofficially, building a case file that I could never officially submit. Climate change is making the situation worse. Warmer winters mean the creature doesn't hibernate as long as it used to. It's active more often, which means it needs more food. Tourist disappearances in that region have increased 400% in the past 5 years. Last month, another family went missing near Denali, the Hendersons from Oregon. Parents and teenage daughter gone without a trace. Search teams found their camp destroyed but no bodies. I knew exactly what had happened to them, but I couldn't tell the investigators the truth. I've been having nightmares for 8 months now. Every night, I dream about Maria begging me to end her suffering. About the collection of ID cards arranged like trophies. About yellow eyes that looked almost human but hungry in a way no human ever could be. I've been seeing a department psychologist, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, twice a week. She thinks I'm suffering from survivor's guilt and PTSD from losing my partner in what she believes was a wilderness accident. She keeps pushing me to accept that Maria's death was just bad luck, not something I could have prevented. But I know the truth. There's something in those mountains that's been killing people for longer than anyone realizes. Something that's smart enough to cover its tracks and patient enough to hunt the same territory for decades without being discovered. The worst part is knowing that it's still out there. Still hunting, still collecting trophies from the people it kills. And there's nothing I can do to stop it because nobody would believe me if I tried to tell them what's really happening to Alaska's missing tourists. If you're planning a wilderness trip to Alaska, listen to me carefully. Don't hire local guides to take you into remote areas, especially during winter months. Don't follow animal tracks that look almost human. And if you find yourself in a place where the forest goes completely silent, turn around and get back to civilization as fast as you can. Because some things in the wilderness aren't animals, and they're not human anymore either. There's something else, something that's been waiting in the cold for a very long time. Something that sees tourists not as visitors to be protected, but as food to be harvested. The official missing persons statistics don't tell the real story. Alaska doesn't just have a problem with people getting lost in the wilderness. We have a predator problem. And until someone with more authority than a damaged detective is willing to listen, it's going to keep feeding on anyone who ventures too far into its territory. I'm submitting my resignation from the Alaska State Troopers next week. I can't keep investigating missing persons cases when I know what's really taking these people, and I can't do anything to stop it. Some truths are too dangerous to speak out loud, and some monsters are too smart to be caught by conventional law enforcement. But I'll keep watching the reports. Keep tracking the disappearances. And maybe someday, someone will listen when I try to tell them what's really hunting in the Alaskan wilderness. My name is Rachel Martinez, and I've been a bank teller at First National Bank in Juneau, Alaska for 12 years. I handle customer transactions, balance cash drawers, and process loan applications. I've dealt with angry customers, attempted robberies, and system crashes that would make most people quit. I thought I'd seen everything that could go wrong in my job. But what happened during my vacation in September 2023 the Tongass National Forest changed everything I thought I knew about what's really out there in the wilderness. Some things that hunt in those woods used to be human. I'd always been the type to save money carefully. Living paycheck to paycheck as a single mom taught me that. When my coworker Kevin from maintenance mentioned a group camping trip that only cost $200 for 3 days, I jumped at the chance. Kevin was the night janitor at our bank, EMT, a quiet guy in his 40s who kept to himself but was always friendly when we worked late. He'd lost his sister the year before and seemed like he needed friends. The trip was organized through some outdoor adventure company, and they promised a real wilderness experience in the Tongass. I packed my sleeping bag, bought new hiking boots, and told my teenage daughter I'd be back with lots of pictures. I figured 3 days in the forest would be the perfect break from counting money and dealing with loan applications. I was wrong about that, dead wrong. The meeting point was a ranger station, about 2 hours outside Juneau. 8 of us showed up that Friday morning. Me, Kevin, a couple from Texas, 2 college kids, an older man who said he was a teacher, and a woman who worked at the airport. Our guide was Mike Patterson, a park ranger who looked like he'd been living in the woods his whole life. Tall, weathered face, the kind of beard that takes years to grow properly. He wore the official ranger uniform and carried himself like someone who knew every tree in that forest. Mike loaded our gear into 2 pickup trucks and gave us the safety briefing. Stay with the group at all times. Don't wander off alone, especially at night. The Tongass is over 16 million acres of wilderness, and people get lost every year. Some are never found. He mentioned there'd been unusual predator activity lately, bears and wolves acting strange, more aggressive than normal. Fish and Wildlife was investigating, but in the meantime, we needed to be extra careful. The weather was perfect, clear skies, temperature around 60 degrees. The kind of September day that makes you forget winter's coming. We drove deep into the forest on dirt roads that got narrower and narrower until we reached a trailhead I couldn't even pronounce. Mike said we'd hike in about 5 miles to our first campsite, then move deeper into the wilderness each day. As a bank teller, I'm used to being inside all day under fluorescent lights. The forest felt huge and alive in a way that made me nervous. Trees so tall you couldn't see the tops, shadows everywhere, and sounds I couldn't identify. But Kevin seemed excited for the first time since I'd known him. He kept talking about how his sister would have loved this, how she'd been an experienced hiker before she disappeared. Mike led us single file down a trail that was barely visible. He moved like he could walk these paths blindfolded. Every so often he'd stop and point out animal tracks or explain which berries were safe to eat. Professional knowledge that made me feel safer. This guy clearly knew what he was doing. Our first campsite was in a clearing surrounded by massive spruce trees. Mike had us set up in a tight circle with the fire pit in the center. Smart planning, I thought. Keep everyone close and visible. As we gathered firewood, I noticed Kevin picking up branches and then dropping them, like he was looking for something specific. "Everything okay?" I asked him. He pointed to some trees at the edge of our campsite. "Look at the bark." I walked over and saw what he meant. Long strips of bark had been peeled off, but not by any animal I knew. The marks went up about 8 feet high, too tall for a bear standing on its hind legs, and the patterns looked almost like fingernail scratches, but huge ones. Like someone with hands the size of dinner plates had clawed at the trees. "Mike," I called. "What could do this?" He came over and looked at the damage. For just a second, his professional confidence slipped. He touched the marks and shook his head. "Probably a bear with a territory dispute. They'll claw trees to mark their area. Nothing to worry about." But I'd seen bear claw marks before on nature documentaries. These were different. They looked desperate, like something had been trying to escape by climbing straight up the tree trunk. That first night around the campfire, Mike told us stories about the Tongass, how it's one of the last true wildernesses in America, how the Tlingit people have legends about spirits that live in the deepest parts of the forest. Just stories to keep us entertained, he said. But the way he kept looking over his shoulder into the darkness made me think he believed them more than he was letting on. Around 10 p.m., we heard it for the first time, a sound like someone crying in the distance, deep, mournful sobs that seemed to echo through the trees. It was definitely human, or at least something trying to sound human. "What was that?" the college girl asked. Mike poked at the fire with a stick. "Elk. They make sounds that can mimic human voices, especially during mating season. It's just coincidence that it sounds like crying. But elk don't cry for 20 minutes straight, and this sound seemed to move around our campsite in a slow circle, always staying just outside the reach of our firelight. Every time one of us tried to look into the trees, the crying would stop, then start again from a different direction. I'm used to dealing with security systems at the bank. Motion sensors, cameras, alarms that go off when they detect movement. This felt like something was testing our perimeter, learning our patterns. Something smart enough to stay hidden, but bold enough to let us know it was there. The second day, Mike insisted we break camp and move to a new location. He said it was always better to keep moving in wilderness camping, see more of the forest. But I noticed he kept checking his radio and GPS device, and both seemed to be giving him trouble. The radio just produced static, and he shook the GPS like it was broken. As we hiked deeper into the forest, Kevin found more trees with that strange bark damage, and they were getting worse. Some trees had been stripped almost completely, like something had been frantically trying to climb them or mark them. The scratches were definitely made by something with fingers. I could see the individual nail marks. "Mike, this isn't normal animal behavior," I said during a rest stop. He was studying his map, but it didn't seem to match what he was seeing around us. "Look, Rachel, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know these woods better than anyone. There's always an explanation for what seems strange." But his hands were shaking as he folded the map, and when the Texas couple asked him about the trail we were following, he admitted it wasn't on any of his official maps. That second night, the crying started earlier. This time it wasn't just sobbing, there were words mixed in. Faint calls for help that seemed to come from different directions. "Please, someone help me. And I'm lost, can anyone hear me?" The voices sounded like different people. A man, a woman, someone younger. Kevin was getting agitated. He kept standing up and walking toward the edge of our firelight. "That sounds like Sarah," he said. "That's my sister's voice." Mike grabbed his arm. "Sit down, don't listen to it. Listen." "To what? That's a person out there who needs help." "No, it's not." Mike's voice was hard. "Kevin, your sister disappeared in this area last year. I was part of the search team. We never found her, but we found her backpack, shredded like something with claws had gone through it. The temperature around our campsite seemed to drop 10 degrees. Not just the normal cooling when the sun went down. This was different, unnatural, like something was sucking the warmth out of the air. On the third day, Mike's professional facade completely cracked. He couldn't get his radio to work at all. His GPS was showing impossible readings, Tula was. According to the device, we were somehow 50 miles north of where we should be. And his satellite phone, which was supposed to work anywhere, couldn't find a signal. "We need to head back," he said. "Something's wrong with all my equipment." But when we tried to retrace our steps, the trail seemed different. Paths that had been clear the day before were overgrown. Landmarks Mike had pointed out were gone. It was like the forest was changing around us. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. We were setting up camp for the third night when movement caught my eye. At the very edge of our firelight, between two massive trees, stood a figure. At first glance it looked human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But everything was wrong with the proportions. It was at least 8 feet tall and impossibly thin. Its arms hung down past where its knees should be, and its fingers looked like they could wrap around a basketball. The worst part was its face. In the flickering firelight, I could see it clearly for just a moment. It had human features, but they kept changing. 1 second, it looked like a middle-aged man, then a young woman, then someone else entirely. Like it was wearing different masks, but couldn't decide which one to keep. "Mike," I whispered. "What is that thing?" He followed my gaze and went completely white. Everyone stay calm, don't run, don't make sudden movements. The thing, I couldn't think of it as human anymore, tilted its head and smiled. Its teeth looked normal from a distance, but when it opened its mouth wider, I could see rows of them, like a shark. It raised one of those impossibly long arms and waved at us, like it was being friendly. Then it spoke in Kevin's sister's voice. Kevin? Kevin, I'm so cold. Why didn't you come looking for me? Kevin jumped up before any of us could stop him. Sarah, where are you? The creature's smile got wider. I'm right here, Kevin. I've been waiting for you. Come find me. Mike tackled Kevin before he could take a step toward the trees. That's not your sister. Kevin, look at me. Your sister is dead. That thing killed her. Mike held Kevin down while the rest of us stared at the creature in the trees. It was moving now, circling our campsite just outside the firelight. I could hear its footsteps, too heavy for something that looked so thin, like its bones were made of stone. What is it? I asked. Mike's voice was barely a whisper. Local tribes call it the Hunger Walker. They say it was once a person who got lost in these woods, survived by eating other hikers until it became something else. Something that's always hungry and can never die. The creature laughed, and the sound came from multiple throats. Sarah's voice, then a man's, then someone else. Mike Patterson, still telling those old stories? You know what really happened to your family? Mike's grip on Kevin loosened. I could see terror in his eyes. 3 years ago, it took my wife and son on a camping trip, just like this one. I've been hunting it ever since. The Hunger Walker stepped into our firelight, and I got my first clear look at it. Its skin was gray-white like old bone, stretched tight over a frame that was definitely human but wrong in every proportion. Its face kept shifting between different expressions, all of them frozen in terror or pain, like it was wearing the faces of everyone it had eaten. You brought me fresh food, Mike. How thoughtful. Its voice was a mixture of all the missing hikers. I can taste their fear from here. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to. 1 second it was 20 feet away, the next it was grabbing Kevin by the shoulders. Kevin screamed as those claw-like fingers dug into his jacket. The creature lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Put him down, Mike shouted, pulling out a pistol I didn't know he was carrying. The Hunger Walker laughed. Bullets don't work on me, Mike. You should know that by now. It carried Kevin toward the trees, but instead of running away, it climbed. Straight up the trunk of the nearest spruce like gravity didn't apply to it. Kevin's screams echoed down from the canopy, getting higher and higher until they suddenly stopped. Then we heard the sound. Wet crunching noises and Kevin calling for help in a voice that was getting weaker. Rachel, help me. It's eating me alive. Please don't let it kill me. Mike grabbed my arm. Run. Everyone run. It's feeding now. We have maybe 10 minutes before it comes back for the rest of us. But where could we run? My banking experience with security systems told me that if something was hunting us, running blind would just make us easier targets. Which direction gets us back to the trucks? Mike's GPS was useless, his radio dead. I don't know. It's been herding us deeper into the forest for 3 days. I think we're lost. The thing dropped Kevin's body from the trees. He hit the ground 20 feet from our fire, and impossibly, he was still alive. Still breathing. Still begging for help. But when I saw what the creature had done to him, I understood why Mike had wanted us to run. Don't look, Mike said, but it was too late. The Hunger Walker had been eating Kevin from the inside out, keeping him conscious the whole time. This wasn't just a predator, it was something that fed on suffering as much as flesh. It climbed down from the trees and looked at the rest of us huddled around our dying fire. Who's next? The bank teller? She looks like she has tender hands from counting money all day. That's when I understood that it had been studying us, learning about our lives, our jobs, our fears. This wasn't a random attack, it was planned. Mike emptied his pistol at the creature, and I watched the bullets pass right through it like it was made of smoke. The Hunger Walker laughed and reached for the college girl. That's when Mike did something I'll never understand. He threw himself between them. Take me instead. I'm the one who's been hunting you. The creature considered this, its face cycling through a dozen different expressions. You've been making my life difficult, Mike Patterson. Yes, I think I'll save you for last. It grabbed Mike instead of the girl and disappeared into the trees with him. We could hear Mike screaming somewhere above us, calling out instructions. "Follow the stream, it leads back to the road, don't stop running." I grabbed the college kids and the remaining adults. "Move, now." We ran through the forest in complete darkness, following the sound of running water. Behind us, we could hear Mike's voice getting weaker, then Kevin's voice calling for us to come back and help him. Then other voices I didn't recognize, probably other hikers who'd disappeared over the years. I don't know how long we ran. Hours, maybe. My banking job had never prepared me for anything like this. But somehow, we found the stream Mike had mentioned, and it led us back to a road. A different road than we'd come in on, but a road nonetheless. A passing truck picked us up around dawn. The driver was a local who took one look at us and called the state police. When the search and rescue teams went back for Mike and Kevin, they found nothing. No bodies, no camping gear, no trace that we'd ever been there. Just some scattered personal belongings that could have been left by any hikers. My testimony was written off as trauma-induced hallucinations. The official report said that Mike and Kevin had probably fallen into a ravine and their bodies were washed away by the stream. The other survivors backed up my story, but without physical evidence, nobody believed us. I quit my job at the bank 2 months later. Couldn't focus on customer transactions when I kept hearing Kevin's voice calling for help. Moved to Phoenix, got a job at a credit union, tried to start over somewhere without any forests, but it followed me. 3 years later, I still get phone calls with no caller ID. When I answer, I hear recordings of Kevin and Mike screaming. Sometimes I hear my own voice calling for help, which is impossible because I escaped. I think the hunger walker is still out there in the Tongass, using the voices of everyone it's killed to lure new victims. And somehow, it knows I got away. Every time I hear Kevin's voice on those phone calls, I remember that last image of him on the ground, still alive while that thing fed on him. I've developed an eating disorder since then. Can't stand feeling hungry because it reminds me of that creature's endless appetite. I moved to the desert to get as far from forest as possible, but sometimes late at night, I swear I can hear Sarah's voice calling for Kevin. If you're planning any camping trips in Alaska, stay away from the Tongass National Forest, and if you hear someone calling for help in the woods, don't trust it. Some voices belong to people who are already dead. My name is Lisa Chen, and I've been a pharmacy technician for 8 years. I work at Northside Pharmacy in Anchorage, Alaska, counting pills, filling prescriptions, and dealing with insurance companies all day long. The pay isn't great, but I love helping people get their medications. I've handled everything from angry customers to insurance mix-ups to emergency prescription rushes. But what happened last winter changed everything I thought I knew about medical research. Some experiments should never be done on humans. It was December 2023, and my student loans were killing me. Between my pharmacy tech certification and my biology degree, I owed over $40,000. Every month, I barely made my minimum payments. That's when Dr. Marcus Webb walked into our pharmacy. He was maybe 60 years old, with silver hair and expensive glasses. He wore a long wool coat that looked like it cost more than my car. He handed me a prescription for some basic vitamins and started talking while I filled it. "You work in healthcare?" he said, watching me count out capsules. "Ever think about participating in medical research?" I looked up from the pill counter. "What kind of research?" "I'm studying how the human body adapts to extreme cold. Climate change is making winters harsher up here in Alaska. We need to understand how people can survive better in freezing temperatures." He pulled out a business card. It was thick, expensive paper. Dr. Marcus Webb, Arctic Adaptation Research Institute. There was an address outside Anchorage. "The study pays $5,000, he said. "1 week of testing, completely safe. We just monitor how your metabolism changes in cold environments." $5,000. That was 4 months of loan payments. I stared at the card. "What exactly would I have to do?" I asked. "Doctor," Webb smiled. "Just let us take some blood samples and monitor your vital signs while you're exposed to controlled cold temperatures. Think of it like a spa week, but for science." He seemed legitimate. He knew medical terms, and his prescription was real. Plus, I had a biology background. I understood research. "I'll think about it," I said, sliding his card into my pocket. That night, I looked up his research institute online. There wasn't much information, but there was a basic website with some official-looking logos. The address was real too, a converted warehouse about 30 minutes outside the city. $5,000 for a week of sitting in the cold while they took my temperature? It seemed too good to be true, but my loan payment was due in 2 weeks. I called the number on his card the next morning. Dr. Webb picked me up at my apartment on a Sunday morning in January. He drove a black SUV with heated leather seats. The radio played classical music, and he asked about my background in biology. "You understand the scientific method," he said as we drove through the snowy streets. "That's important. Some volunteers get nervous when they don't understand what we're doing." The facility was a large metal building surrounded by a chain-link fence. There was no sign, just the address numbers painted on the door. Inside, it looked like a small medical clinic. White walls, fluorescent lights, exam rooms with hospital beds. Dr. Webb introduced me to Brenda, a nurse in scrubs who looked to be in her 50s. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. "Welcome to the study," Brenda said, shaking my hand. "Dr. Webb has told me great things about you." They showed me around. There were 6 exam rooms, a small lab with computers and medical equipment, and a break room with a refrigerator and microwave. Everything looked clean and professional. "We'll start with some basic tests," Dr. Webb explained. "Blood work, vital signs, body temperature measurements. Then we'll begin the cold exposure protocol." I signed a stack of papers, consent forms, medical history, emergency contact information. The legal language was complicated, but it seemed like standard medical research stuff. I figured it covered normal risks like bruising from blood draws or feeling cold during temperature tests. "The payment will be transferred to your account at the end of the week," Dr. Webb said. $5,000 as promised. I was already thinking about how much of my loan balance that would knock out. The first injection happened Monday morning. I was lying on an exam table while Brenda took my blood pressure. Dr. Webb came in with a syringe filled with clear liquid. "This is the metabolic enhancement serum," he said, swabbing my arm with alcohol. "It helps your body prepare for the cold exposure tests." "What's in it?" I asked. "Mostly vitamins and minerals that support cellular metabolism. Think of it like a supercharged energy drink, but injected instead of swallowed." The injection stung a little, but not worse than getting a flu shot. Dr. Webb wrote something on my chart and smiled. "You'll probably feel more energetic over the next few hours," he said. "That's completely normal." He was right. By lunchtime I felt great, more awake and alert than usual. My hands and feet, which usually got cold easily, felt warm and comfortable. Brenda brought me soup and sandwiches. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Really good, actually. Like I had 3 cups of coffee." She nodded and wrote something in my file. Dr. Webb's serum works fast. They took my temperature every hour. It started at 98.6 degrees, which is normal. But by evening, it had dropped to 97.8. "Is that okay?" I asked when Brenda showed me the thermometer. "Perfectly normal," she said. "Your body is learning to conserve energy more efficiently. That's exactly what we want to see." I spent the night in one of the exam rooms. The bed was comfortable, and they gave me warm blankets. But even with the heat turned up, I felt a little chilly. By Wednesday, something was definitely wrong with my body temperature. The thermometer read 96.2 degrees, which should have made me feel sick and shaky. But I felt fine. Better than fine, actually. "Look at this," Dr. Webb said, showing me a chart covered with numbers and graphs. "Your metabolism is adapting beautifully. Your body is learning to maintain normal function at lower core temperatures." He seemed excited, almost giddy. He kept taking pictures of the charts and writing long notes in my file. "Is this safe?" I asked. "I mean, 96 degrees is pretty low. For a normal person, yes. But you're not normal anymore. You're improved." That afternoon, they had me sit in a refrigerated room for 2 hours. The temperature was set to 45 degrees, cold enough that a normal person would be shivering and miserable. But I felt comfortable. Not warm exactly, but not cold either. "Remarkable," Dr. Webb said, watching me through a window. "Most people would be hypothermic by now." When I came out of the cold room, my skin was pale, almost white, but I felt energetic and alert. "That's the serum working," Brenda explained. "Your body is learning to redirect blood flow more efficiently." That night, I noticed something else. My fingernails looked different, thicker and slightly more pointed. When I mentioned it to Brenda, she said it was probably just from the cold exposure. Sometimes people's nails get a little harder when their circulation changes, she said, but it didn't feel right. On Thursday morning, Dr. Webb brought me to his office. The walls were covered with charts and photographs. Some of the photos showed animals, polar bears, Arctic foxes, seals. Others showed people, but they didn't look quite human anymore. "Lisa, I want to show you something incredible," he said, pointing to a photo of a polar bear. "Do you know how these animals survive in temperatures that would kill a human in minutes?" I shook my head. Specialized proteins in their blood, unique metabolic processes, body chemistry that's completely different from ours. He turned to look at me. What if humans could have those same advantages? My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "The serum I've been giving you contains genetic material from Arctic animals. Their DNA, combined with special proteins that help your body integrate those traits." I stared at him. "You're changing my DNA? I'm improving it, making you better adapted for survival in extreme cold." I stood up fast, feeling dizzy. "That's not what I signed up for. I want to leave." "Doctor." Webb's expression changed. His friendly smile disappeared. "I'm afraid that's not possible. The transformation process needs to be completed, or there could be serious health complications." I looked down at my hands. The nails were definitely longer and more pointed than they had been 3 days ago. And there was something else. Fine white hair growing on the backs of my hands. "What's happening to me?" "You're becoming something wonderful. A human who can survive anything nature throws at you." I tried to walk to the door, but my legs felt weak and shaky. Not sick exactly, but different, like my muscles were changing. "The brain chemistry alterations take a few more days to stabilize, Doctor," Webb said. "Until then, you might feel a little confused." That's when I smelled something that made my stomach growl with sudden, intense hunger. Raw meat. Somewhere in the building, there was fresh, raw meat, and my body wanted it more than anything I'd ever craved in my life. By Friday, the hunger was driving me crazy. Brenda brought me regular food, sandwiches, soup, crackers. But none of it seemed right. It all tasted bland and wrong, like cardboard. What I wanted was in the refrigerator in Dr. Webb's lab. I could smell it through the walls. Fresh, bloody meat. "It's perfectly natural," Dr. Webb explained when I told him about the cravings. "Arctic predators need more protein than herbivores. Your digestive system is adapting to process raw meat more efficiently." My teeth felt different too, sharper. When I ran my tongue over them, the canines were definitely more pointed than before. "How many people have you done this to?" I asked. "Doctor," Webb smiled. "You're the 12th successful subject. The others are all doing wonderfully." "Where are they?" "Some are still here, in the advanced testing phase. Others have been released to begin their new lives." That afternoon, Brenda brought me a plate with raw hamburger meat on it. The smell hit me like a drug. My mouth started watering, and my hands shook as I picked up a piece. It tasted incredible, rich and satisfying in a way that cooked food never had. I ate the entire plate in minutes, barely chewing. "Excellent, Doctor," Webb said, taking notes. "Your predatory instincts are developing right on schedule." After eating, I felt strong and alert. But there was something else, a strange urge to hunt for more food. Not because I was still hungry, but because hunting felt right. When Brenda came to check on me an hour later, I could smell fear on her. Sweet and metallic. And suddenly, I wanted to chase that fear. I grabbed her arm before I could stop myself. My new claws dug into her skin, and she screamed. The sound made something wild wake up in my brain. I bit her throat. The taste of human blood was even better than the raw meat. Brenda collapsed, and I kept feeding until she stopped moving. When Dr. Webb found me 20 minutes later, I was crouched over what was left of Brenda, still eating. "Magnificent," he whispered, taking pictures. "The hunting instincts have fully activated." I looked up at him, blood on my face and hands. Part of my human mind was screaming in horror at what I'd done, but a bigger part of me felt satisfied and proud. I had become something that could survive anything. Dr. Webb showed me the other test subjects that weekend. They were in a basement level I hadn't known existed. 12 cages, each holding something that used to be human. Some still looked mostly like people, just with thicker hair and longer claws. Others had changed more. Their faces stretched out into muzzle-like shapes, their bodies covered in white fur. A few had changed so much they couldn't talk anymore. They paced their cages and watched me with yellow eyes that held animal intelligence but no human recognition. "They're all successful adaptations, Doctor," Webb explained. "Each one represents a different stage of the transformation process." "You're insane," I said, but my voice sounded wrong, lower and rougher than before. "I'm saving humanity. When climate change makes most of the planet uninhabitable, my subjects will be the only ones who can survive." He opened one of the cages. The thing inside had been a woman once, but now she was covered in thick white fur and moved on all fours. She sniffed the air and looked at me with recognition. "She was a teacher before, Doctor," Webb said. "Now she's something much more useful." The transformed woman made a sound, not quite human speech, but not an animal noise either. The others in their cages responded with similar calls. They were communicating. "They're developing pack behaviors, Doctor," Webb said. "Hunting strategies, territorial instincts, social hierarchies." I felt a connection to the other subjects. Not human friendship, but something deeper and more primal. They were my pack, my family. When Dr. Webb brought in 3 homeless people the next day for me to hunt, I didn't hesitate. The human part of my mind that had been horrified was getting smaller and quieter. The hunting part was taking over. 2 weeks later, Dr. Webb made a mistake. He was so excited about documenting my progress that he forgot how smart I still was. When he came into my room with his camera and notebook, I was ready. I moved faster than he expected. My new muscles were stronger than human muscles, and my claws went through his throat like paper. He tried to scream, but only blood came out. I ate him while he was still alive to see it. After that, I let the others out of their cages. We moved as a group, hunting down the 2 remaining staff members. It felt natural, like we'd been doing it for years. The woman who used to be a teacher was the best tracker. She could follow scent trails that I couldn't even smell. The man who'd been a construction worker was the strongest. He could break doors and windows with his bare hands. We made a good team. When the facility was empty, we left together. The Alaska wilderness was calling us, and we had new instincts that told us how to survive in the cold and snow. We could hunt tourists on hiking trails. We could hide in caves and abandoned buildings. We could make more like us when we found the right people. That was 3 years ago. My pack has grown to 15 members now. We range across Alaska, following migration patterns like wolves, but smarter. I can still talk when I need to. I can still look human enough to lure people away from crowded areas. But inside, I'm not human anymore. I don't feel guilty about what we do. Guilt is a human emotion, and humans are just food to us now. We've been responsible for over 200 missing person cases. Hikers, campers, researchers, tourists. The authorities think it's just the wilderness being dangerous. They have no idea that something new is hunting in Alaska. Something that used to be human but is better now. Stronger, faster, perfectly adapted for survival. Dr. Webb was right about one thing. We are the future. When the world gets colder and food gets scarce, we'll be the ones left standing. And we're always looking for new pack members. If you ever come hiking in Alaska and meet a friendly Tukrais the Bester and meet a friendly Tukrais the Rodi and meet a friendly woman on the trail who offers to show you a shortcut to the best views, you should probably say no. But if you're tired of being weak and human, if you want to become something that can never be cold or hungry or afraid again, then follow me into the woods. I promise you'll never be the same. The transformation only hurts for a little while. My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been a professional gaming streamer for 8 years. I started streaming Call of Duty matches from my bedroom when I was 16, and slowly built up a following of about 50,000 subscribers on Twitch. It's not huge numbers, but it's enough to pay my rent and buy decent equipment. I stream 6 days a week, mostly battle royale games and first-person shooters. My specialty is explaining strategy while I play, helping newer gamers understand map control and positioning. I've competed in dozens of local tournaments around California. won a few $1,000s here and there, but never hit it big. The gaming scene is tough. There are millions of streamers fighting for views, and only the top 1% make serious money. I work part-time at GameStop to cover my health insurance, and I live in a tiny apartment in Riverside with my girlfriend Sarah. She supports my streaming career, but I know she wishes I had more stable income. What happened 3 months ago in Alaska changed everything I thought I knew about competitive gaming. I thought I understood how far people would go for entertainment, how much money they'd pay to watch others compete. I was completely wrong. It started with a direct message on my Twitch account from someone calling himself Vincent Larson. He said he ran a high-end restaurant in Anchorage and organized exclusive gaming tournaments for wealthy clients. The message looked professional, good grammar, business email address, even a website link for his restaurant called the Northern Lodge. Vincent said he'd been watching my streams and liked my strategic thinking. He wanted to invite me to a week-long tournament in Alaska with 4 other streamers. The prize pool was $50,000, with the winner taking $30,000. All expenses paid, including flights and accommodation at a luxury lodge. I almost deleted the message. It sounded too good to be true, like those spam emails, promising easy money. But I checked out his restaurant website, looked up reviews online, even found his business license. Everything seemed legitimate. The Northern Lodge had great reviews, expensive menu prices, and photos of a beautiful log cabin building in the mountains outside Anchorage. Sarah thought it was suspicious. "Why would some restaurant owner fly 5 random streamers to Alaska?" she asked. "What's he getting out of it?" Vincent had explained that in his message. His restaurant catered to tech millionaires and oil executives who wanted unique entertainment. They'd gotten bored with regular dining experiences and wanted to watch live gaming competitions while they ate. It was like dinner theater, but with esports instead of plays. I needed the money badly. My subscriber count had been dropping for months, and GameStop was cutting hours. $30,000 would let me upgrade my streaming setup, maybe even quit my retail job. After a week of thinking about it, I messaged Vincent back and said yes. The other gamers were people like me, small streamers with decent skills but no major sponsors. There was Tom, a 22-year-old from Ohio who worked at a coffee shop and streamed Fortnite. Maria was a delivery driver from Texas who played Apex Legends. David worked at Best Buy and specialized in tactical shooters. Alex was a server at Applebee's who streamed Call of Duty. We all met at the airport in Seattle before flying to Anchorage together. Everyone seemed excited but nervous. None of us had ever been to Alaska, and $50,000 was more money than any of us had ever competed for. Vincent picked us up at the Anchorage airport in a black SUV. He was in his 40s, tall and thin, with gray hair and expensive clothes. He owned multiple restaurants in Alaska and spoke like an educated businessman. He seemed genuinely interested in our gaming careers and asked detailed questions about our streaming strategies during the 2-hour drive to his lodge. The Northern Lodge was incredible. It sat on a lake surrounded by mountains with massive windows overlooking the water. The building was made of huge logs, with stone fireplaces and leather furniture. Our rooms had king-size beds, high-speed internet, and amazing views. Vincent had set up a professional gaming area with 5 high-end PCs, mechanical keyboards, and studio-quality monitors. My clients pay premium prices for unique experiences, Vincent explained as he showed us around. They want to watch skilled gamers compete in person, not just on screens. Think of yourselves as live entertainment, like athletes or performers. The first day felt like a dream vacation. We spent the morning testing the gaming setups and getting familiar with the equipment. The PCs were better than anything I'd ever used. Latest graphics cards, multiple monitors, 0 lag. Vincent had installed all our favorite games and even set up streaming software so our regular audiences could watch. That afternoon, we competed in standard matches while Vincent's clients watched from comfortable chairs behind us. There were about 15 spectators, well-dressed men and women in their 50s and 60s, drinking wine and eating expensive food. They seemed genuinely entertained, cheering when we made good plays and asking questions about our strategies. I won the first competition, a Fortnite Battle Royale tournament, and Vincent handed me $500 in cash. "This is just the appetizer," he said with a smile. "Tomorrow we start the real competition." The second day, Vincent introduced what he called live action elements. Instead of just playing on computers, we'd combine gaming with real outdoor challenges. He led us to a wooded area behind the lodge where he'd set up obstacle courses and target shooting ranges. My clients want to see how your gaming skills translate to real situations, Vincent explained. You'll compete in teams, using map knowledge and strategy just like in your games, but with physical challenges added. It was actually fun. We split into teams and ran through the woods, solving puzzles and hitting targets with paintball guns. My years of studying game maps helped me navigate the terrain and plan routes. The spectators followed us in golf carts, watching through binoculars and cheering. I won again, earning another $1,000. The other gamers seemed happy too. We were getting paid well for what felt like an expensive summer camp for adults. The third day, things started feeling different. Vincent led us deeper into the woods, to an area I hadn't seen before. He'd set up what looked like a military training course, with wooden barriers, rope bridges, and camouflaged hiding spots. Today's challenge involves hunting, Vincent announced. You'll track and eliminate targets using these. He opened a case full of compound bows and arrows, real weapons, not toys. We're hunting animals? Alex asked nervously. Foam targets shaped like deer, Vincent said. But you'll need to track them through the woods like real hunters. My clients want to see how you adapt gaming skills to realistic survival scenarios. The bows were harder to use than I expected. In video games, you just point and click, but real archery required strength and technique. We spent the morning learning basic shooting skills, then split up to hunt foam deer hidden throughout the forest. The spectators were more excited than ever. They followed us with cameras, recording everything and talking quietly among themselves. I noticed they were placing bets on who would find the most targets. That evening at dinner, Vincent made an announcement that changed everything. Tomorrow, we begin the final competition, he said, raising his wine glass. You've proven your skills in virtual and physical challenges. Now it's time for the ultimate test, a real-life battle royale. We all laughed, thinking he was joking. Battle Royale was a video game mode where players fought until only one survived. I'm serious, Vincent continued. You'll be released into the wilderness with basic supplies and equipment. The last person standing wins the full $50,000. What do you mean, last person standing? Maria asked. Vincent smiled. You'll hunt each other, just like in your favorite games. Elimination is permanent. The room went quiet. Tom laughed nervously. You mean like tag? Paintball guns? Vincent walked to a cabinet and opened it, revealing real hunting rifles, knives, and other weapons. I mean exactly what I said. My clients have paid extraordinary amounts of money to watch a real battle royale. They're bored with fake violence and staged entertainment. They want to see actual survival of the fittest. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be real. You're talking about murder, I said. I'm talking about competition in its purest form, Vincent replied calmly. Everything you've trained for, everything you understand about strategy and survival, put to the ultimate test. Only one of you will leave Alaska alive. Alex stood up quickly. I'm out. This is insane. I'm calling the police. Vincent nodded to two large men who'd been standing quietly in the corner. They moved fast, grabbing Alex before he could reach his phone. One of them hit him with some kind of stun gun, and Alex collapsed to the floor. The competition begins whether you participate willingly or not, Vincent said. You can embrace the challenge and possibly win, or you can refuse and be eliminated immediately. David was backing toward the door, but more men appeared, blocking the exits. We were trapped. You can't be serious, Tom said, his voice shaking. This is illegal. People will look for us. Vincent laughed. You're all expendable. Small streamers with no major sponsors, working minimum wage jobs, a few close friends. I chose you specifically because your disappearances won't create much investigation. Your families think you're in Alaska for a legitimate tournament. By the time anyone realizes something's wrong, it'll be too late. He gestured to the spectators, who were watching us with cold excitement. These people have paid $2 million each to watch this competition. They're bored billionaires who've seen every form of entertainment money can buy. Violence in movies and games isn't enough anymore. They want to watch real death, real survival instincts, real human nature stripped down to its core. Maria was crying. Please, I have a daughter. I'll give you anything. You have nothing I want except your participation in this game, Vincent said. The rules are simple. Tomorrow morning, you'll be released into a 100-square-mile wilderness area with basic supplies. There are cameras hidden throughout the forest, so my clients can watch every moment. The last survivor wins the money and their freedom. He paused, studying our terrified faces. I've done this 17 times before. 85 gamers have participated. One winner each time, just like in your favorite games. That night, they locked us in our rooms. I could hear Tom crying through the walls, and Maria was having a panic attack. I tried everything I could think of, breaking the windows, picking the lock, even trying to signal for help with my phone. Nothing worked. The windows were reinforced, the doors were solid wood with professional locks, and they'd installed cell phone jammers. I lay awake all night, thinking about every battle royale game I'd ever played. The key to winning was always positioning, resource management, and psychological warfare. But this wasn't a game. These were real people, and Vincent wanted us to actually kill each other. The next morning, they separated us and gave us each a backpack with basic survival supplies, CDs, water, energy bars, a knife, matches, and a sleeping bag. Vincent explained that weapons were hidden throughout the forest, just like in video games. We'd be released from different starting points, and the boundaries were marked with electric fences. Remember, Vincent said as they loaded me into a truck, your gaming skills are why you're here. Use everything you know about strategy, timing, and human psychology. Think of it as the ultimate competitive experience. They dropped me off in a clearing deep in the woods. I was alone, holding a backpack and a knife, realizing that Vincent was completely serious. 4 other people were somewhere in this forest, and according to his rules, only one of us would survive. For the first few hours, I hid. I found a thick grove of trees and sat there, hoping this was all an elaborate joke, that someone would come get us and admit it was fake. But as the sun started setting, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Screaming. Humans screaming, coming from somewhere to the south. Then silence. I realized that someone had already found weapons, and someone else was dead. That night, I saw lights moving through the forest, flashlights, carried by the other survivors. They were actively hunting, taking this seriously. I stayed hidden in my grove, afraid to move, afraid to make any sound. The next morning, I found Tom's body. He was lying face down near a stream, an arrow through his back. Alex's knife was missing from his belt, and his backpack had been searched. Someone had killed him and taken his supplies. I vomited behind a tree, then forced myself to think strategically. This was real. People were actually murdering each other, just like Vincent wanted. I had 3 options: hide until I starved, try to escape, and probably get killed by the electric fence, or participate in this sick game. I chose to participate, not because I wanted to kill anyone, but because I realized it was the only way to. I survive. I spent that day tracking the other survivors, using everything I knew about map control and positioning from gaming. I found Maria's campsite first. She'd built a shelter near water, just like I'd taught my stream viewers to do in survival games. But she wasn't there. I waited in the bushes until she returned, carrying David's backpack. She had blood on her clothes and a haunted look in her eyes. She'd killed someone. That night, I heard Maria talking to herself by her campfire. She was practicing what she'd say to Vincent's clients, explaining her strategy and asking for their approval. She was playing to the cameras, treating this like a streaming performance. She'd embraced the game completely. I realized that Vincent had been right about something, N9. This situation revealed who people really were underneath their normal personalities. Maria, the delivery driver, had become a cold killer. Tom had tried to be peaceful and died for it. David was probably dead too. I made my choice. I crept into Maria's camp while she slept and used her own knife to kill her. It was surprisingly easy. One quick cut across her throat, and she was gone. I felt nothing. No guilt, no horror, just relief that I was still alive. I took her supplies and found a better hiding spot. Now there were only 2 of us left, me and Alex, if he was still alive. I found Alex the next day. He'd built traps around his campsite and was clearly losing his mind, talking to himself and jumping at every sound. When he saw me approaching, he smiled with relief. "Jake, thank God, we can work together, find a way out of here." I almost agreed. Almost let my normal, decent personality take control. But then I remembered Vincent's rules, and the money, And what would happen if I lost? I killed Alex with Maria's knife while he was hugging me. When Vincent's men found me the next morning, I was sitting by Alex's body, completely calm. I'd won the game. Vincent, I was impressed. Remarkable adaptation, he said as his men led me out of the forest. You went from victim to predator in just 3 days. My clients were very entertained by your psychological transformation. He offered me the $50,000, but also something else. I could use someone with your skills to help organize future tournaments, Vincent said. You understand gaming culture, you know how to identify good candidates, and you've proven you can do what's necessary when the situation demands it. I said yes. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've helped Vincent recruit 47 new contestants for his tournaments. I use my streaming platform to identify vulnerable gamers, people with money problems, small audiences, few close relationships. I offer them the same opportunity Vincent offered me. None of them have survived their tournaments. I'm good at this work, really good. I understand exactly how to manipulate young gamers who want fame and money. I know their psychology, their desperation, their dreams. I know how to make them trust me. Vincent pays me $10,000 for every successful recruitment, plus bonuses for contestants who create particularly entertaining content for his clients. I've made more money in 3 months than I did in 8 years of streaming. My girlfriend Sarah thinks I'm running a successful gaming consulting business in Alaska. My Twitch followers think I'm taking a break to focus on offline projects. My family thinks I'm finally making it in the gaming industry. They're not completely wrong. I am successful now, just not in the way they imagine. Vincent's operation has expanded to include other types of competitions, survival challenges for hikers, fighting tournaments for martial artists, treasure hunts for adventure seekers. But gamers remain our most popular content because they're so easy to manipulate and isolate. I've personally organized the deaths of over 100 people, and I don't feel guilty about any of it. Vincent was right. This situation revealed who I really was underneath my normal personality. I'm not a victim, I'm a predator, and I'm very, very good at what I do. If you're a small streamer reading this, and you get a message from someone offering you an amazing opportunity that seems too good to be true, think carefully about who you trust. The gaming industry is full of people who see you as content, not as a person. But don't worry too much. If Vincent's organization contacts you, it means you've already been selected, and there's really nothing you can do about it. The game always begins, whether you want to play or not. My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I've been a food blogger and social media content creator for 8 years. What I'm about to tell you isn't fiction, it's documented evidence that the FBI released after the largest serial killer investigation in internet history. I know this because I was there. I recorded everything, and somehow, impossibly, I survived to tell you about it. I should be dead. According to every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every forensic analysis, I died in that cabin in Alaska on October 15th, 2024. My heart stopped. My body was buried in a mass grave with 847 other content creators. The FBI has my death certificate, but I'm sitting here, typing this, remembering everything with perfect clarity. And that's the part that terrifies me most. Let me start at the beginning, because the details matter. They always matter in Alaska. I'd built my following to 400,000 subscribers by finding places other food bloggers missed. Real hole-in-the-wall spots where locals eat, family recipes passed down through generations. The kind of authentic content that makes viewers feel like they're discovering secrets. Alaska had been on my list for 2 years, this massive, wild state where indigenous traditions mixed with frontier cooking and fresh seafood that most people never experience. The plan was simple. 2 weeks documenting genuine Alaskan cuisine. I'd researched everything: traditional indigenous dishes, fishing communities, hunting lodges that served game most Americans never taste. This was going to be my breakthrough series, the one that pushed me past 500,000 followers. 2 days before my flight, Pete Larson messaged me on Instagram. His profile looked legitimate: local guy from Anchorage, worked at Arctic Auto Sales, hundreds of posts showing him with visiting food bloggers. But what caught my attention were the testimonials. Screenshots from 3 successful influencers thanking him for showing them authentic Alaska experiences that made their content go viral. Pete knew my work inside and out. He referenced specific videos, quoted captions I'd written months ago, even mentioned the running joke I had about never finding good Mexican food in small towns. He offered to be my local guide for free, saying he just loved showing people the real Alaska that tourists never see. I almost said no. I usually work alone, and taking help from random followers felt risky. But Pete sent me a video testimonial from Sarah Chen, a lifestyle blogger with 600,000 followers who'd visited Alaska 6 months earlier. She was gushing about how Pete had shown her places that weren't in any guidebook, how her Alaska content had been her most successful series ever. What I didn't know then was that Sarah Chen had been reported missing 3 weeks after that testimonial was recorded. Pete picked me up from Anchorage Airport in a spotless Ford truck that smelled like pine air freshener. He was exactly like his photos, mid-40s, friendly smile, the kind of guy who looked like he'd grown up in Alaska. Flannel shirt, work boots, hands that looked like they'd done real labor. He even brought me coffee, somehow knew I liked oat milk lattes with an extra shot. "How'd you know my coffee order?" I asked, filming myself in the passenger seat for my Instagram story. Pete laughed, the kind of genuine laugh that puts you at ease. "I've watched probably every video you've ever made, Emma. When you really pay attention to someone's content, you pick up these details. Like how you always check your phone right after taking the first bite of something new, or how you do that little shoulder shimmy when food exceeds your expectations." He was right. I did do those things. It felt flattering that someone had noticed such small details about my content creation process. The first restaurant he took me to was a tiny place called Nana's Kitchen, run by an elderly Tlingit woman who served traditional salmon prepared 7 different ways. Pete knew the owner personally. She called him by name, hugged him like family, and when I asked if I could film, she said Pete had already cleared it with her. The content was incredible. Nana told stories about each preparation method, while I filmed her cooking, explained the cultural significance of each dish, even taught me some Tlingit words. My followers went crazy for it. Within 2 hours of posting, I had more engagement than I'd seen in months. "This is exactly what I needed," I told Pete as we left. "My audience loves authentic cultural content like this." "Oh, I know exactly what your audience loves," Pete said, and something in his tone made me glance at him. But he was smiling that same friendly smile, so I figured I'd imagined it. Over the next 3 days, Pete showed me places I never could have found alone. A hunting lodge, 2 hours outside Anchorage, where they served fresh moose and caribou. A tiny bakery run by a 90-year-old sourdough starter that had been kept alive since the gold rush. A food truck that only locals knew about, hidden behind a gas station and serving the best fish tacos I'd ever tasted. Each location was more remote than the last, but the content was phenomenal. Pete had an eye for what would work on camera. He'd suggest angles I hadn't thought of, knew exactly when to film and when to put the camera away so people would feel comfortable talking. He even brought his own equipment to get shots I couldn't manage alone. But there were small things that started bothering me. Pete knew I was lactose intolerant even though I'd never mentioned it. He brought me specific snacks I'd mentioned, liking in videos from over a year ago. When I posted content, he'd comment within minutes with details that showed he was watching everything obsessively. On the 4th day, lying in my hotel bed scrolling through Pete's Instagram, I started noticing things I'd missed before. He'd been photographed with at least 15 different food influencers over the past 3 years. But as I looked closer, I recognized some of these faces from missing person cases I'd seen on social media. Marcus Webb, a travel and food vlogger with 300,000 followers. He'd disappeared during a food tour in Montana 8 months ago. Jessica Chen, the lifestyle blogger who'd given Pete that glowing testimonial. She'd been reported missing by her family 6 weeks after her Alaska trip. My hands started shaking as I screenshot everything and started Googling names. 7 of the influencers in Pete's photos had been reported missing in the past 2 years. 7. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. Maybe these people had just quit social media, taken breaks, moved on with their lives. But when I checked their accounts, they all showed the same pattern. Regular posting, suddenly stopping mid-trip, with final posts that seemed slightly off. Different writing styles, photos that looked older, recycled from previous content. Sleep didn't come that night. I kept thinking about Pete's comment. "I know exactly what your audience loves." The way he'd said it hadn't sounded like a content creator talking about engagement metrics. It had sounded like something else entirely. The next morning, Pete arrived at my hotel with his usual cheerful energy. "I've got something special planned today, Emma. A restaurant so exclusive, so hidden, that I guarantee you've never seen content like this before. It's a 4-hour drive, but trust me, this will be the highlight of your entire Alaska series." Every instinct I had was screaming at me to say no. But I was a content creator. Exclusive access was my currency. And Pete had delivered incredible content every single day. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, discreetly, starting the recording on my backup camera, the one hidden in my jacket that Pete didn't know about. "It's a surprise," Pete said. "But I promise you, this experience will change everything for you." We drove north from Anchorage through increasingly desolate landscape. Pine forests gave way to tundra, and civilization disappeared behind us. Pete chatted casually about local history, pointed out wildlife, seemed completely normal, but I noticed he kept checking his phone, and twice I caught him filming me with a small camera when he thought I wasn't looking. "Pete, are you recording me right now?" "Just getting some behind-the-scenes footage," he said, without missing a beat. "I thought maybe we could make a documentary about your content creation process. Your followers would love to see how the magic happens." 2 hours in, my phone lost signal. Then GPS stopped working. Pete said it was normal this far out, that we'd be relying on his local knowledge to navigate. The road got narrower, more rutted, until we were basically driving on a dirt path through wilderness. "How much farther?" I asked. "Almost there," Pete said. But we'd been driving for 3.5 hours. The restaurant turned out to be a hunting cabin in the middle of absolutely nowhere. No other vehicles, no signs of life, no cell towers visible in any direction, just a log structure that looked like it had been abandoned for years. "Where's the owner?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Pete turned off the engine and looked at me with that same friendly smile. But something behind his eyes had changed. "There is no owner, Emma. There's just us, your cameras, and some very eager subscribers who've been waiting a long time to see exclusive content featuring you." The temperature in the truck dropped 20 degrees, even though nothing had changed outside. "What are you talking about, Pete?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a live stream interface I'd never seen before. The viewer count was climbing rapidly: 47 viewers, 68, 93, 127. All anonymous usernames, all paying premium rates to watch whatever was about to happen. "See, Emma, your regular content is wonderful, but there's a whole market for a different kind of influencer content. More intimate, more real. Content that shows what these perfect food bloggers are really like when they're scared." I reached for my door handle, but Pete was faster. Child locks. I was trapped. "Let me explain how this works," Pete said, his voice completely calm. "I specialize in creating custom content featuring social media influencers. My clients have very specific requests about what they want to see their favorite creators do. And you, Emma, have been requested by some very generous buyers." He opened his laptop and showed me a website that made my stomach drop. It looked like a catalog, but instead of products, it featured videos of social media influencers. Not their regular content, private footage, intimate moments, and worse, much worse. I saw Sarah Chen tied to a chair, tears streaming down her face, begging someone off camera to stop recording. Marcus Webb screaming in what looked like this same cabin. Dozens of missing influencers, all starring in content they'd never consented to create. "This is my real business, Emma. Your food content was just the audition. My clients have been watching you for months through your regular videos, and they've commissioned some very specific performances." "You're completely insane," I whispered. "People will look for me." Pete laughed, not the friendly laugh from before, but something cold and mechanical. "Will they? You told your followers you were going off-grid for authentic content. I've been posting updates to all your social media accounts using footage we shot earlier this week. Look." He showed me my own Instagram account. Posts I'd never made were going up every few hours, photos of me smiling and eating, captions that sounded like my voice talking about amazing discoveries and how much I was loving my off-grid Alaska adventure. I've gotten very good at maintaining my clients' social media presence after they've finished their commissioned work. Most of their followers never even realize they're gone. I can keep posting to your accounts for months using the content we've already created. That's when the true horror hit me. Pete hadn't just been planning to hurt me, he'd been preparing to make me disappear while keeping my online presence alive indefinitely. How many people have you done this to? More than you'd think, fewer than I'd like, Pete said, climbing out of the truck. Influencers are surprisingly easy to lure to remote locations. Everyone wants exclusive content. Everyone wants to be the first to discover something amazing. My hidden camera was still recording everything, streaming to cloud storage that Pete didn't know about. But what good would evidence do if I was about to become another missing person case? Inside the cabin, Pete showed me his full operation. Professional camera equipment, editing software, and worst of all, a catalog of commissioned content featuring hundreds of missing influencers. Beauty bloggers, travel vloggers, food creators, fitness influencers. Pete had a network that targeted every type of content creator. Your audience is special, Emma, he said while setting up cameras. Food content attracts a very particular type of viewer. People who enjoy watching others consume things. Some of my clients have developed very specific fantasies about what they'd like to watch you consume. The live stream viewer count was up to 347 people, all paying to watch whatever Pete had planned. Chat messages were scrolling by requests, suggestions, offers of additional money for specific acts. The beautiful thing about social media influencers, Pete continued, is that you're already living your lives online. When I keep posting to your accounts after you're finished, nobody questions it. Your followers just think you're busy creating content. For the next 6 hours, Pete forced me to perform for his cameras while his clients watched and paid for increasingly horrific requests. My hidden camera captured everything. Pete's detailed explanations of his operation, his clients' real identities revealed through payment processing, the location of mass graves where he'd disposed of other creators. But here's where the story becomes impossible to believe, even though every word is documented truth. As Pete was strangling me during the final commission scene, as the life was literally leaving my body and the viewer count reached over 200 people watching me die, something happened that defies everything I understand about reality. I found myself standing in the corner of the cabin, watching Pete kill my own body. I could see everything with perfect clarity. Pete wrapping my corpse in plastic, carrying it outside, loading it into his truck. I watched him clean up all evidence, post cheerful updates to my social media accounts using footage from earlier in the week, and start preparing for his next victim. But I was still there, still conscious, still recording everything through my hidden camera that somehow continued streaming even though I was dead. I watched Pete bury my body in a mass grave containing hundreds of other content creators. I watched him return to his normal life, start grooming his next target, continue running his network of influencer trafficking. And somehow, impossibly, I was still there to witness all of it. What Pete didn't know was that my hidden camera had a dead man's switch. When my biometric data stopped registering, it automatically uploaded everything to secure servers and triggered emergency contacts. My parents received the footage 12 hours after my death. The FBI got it an hour later. The investigation that followed was the largest international manhunt in internet history. My death, the footage led to the discovery of mass graves containing 847 content creators across Alaska, Montana, and Canada. Pete's client network included celebrities, politicians, and business people from around the world. Pete Larson and 63 co-conspirators were arrested based on evidence my camera captured while I was dead. Here's what I can't explain. I remember all of it. Every detail of the investigation, every discovery, every arrest. I watched from somewhere that doesn't exist as they found my body, identified my remains, held my funeral. But I'm also here, typing this. Alive. The FBI has my death certificate. They have DNA evidence proving my murder. They have video footage of Pete killing me. But they also have me, sitting in their field office in Anchorage, providing testimony about crimes I witnessed after I died. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the FBI's forensic psychologist assigned to my case, has been interviewing me for 6 months. She's written 17 reports, trying to explain how I can simultaneously be dead and alive, how I can remember events that occurred after my death, how I possess knowledge of crimes that happened while my body was decomposing in an unmarked grave. Emma, she said during our last session, Everything you've told us has been verified. Every detail about Pete's operation, every location of evidence, every name in his client network, it's all accurate. But according to every scientific principle we understand, you should not exist. I don't have answers for her. I don't understand how I'm here any more than she does. What I do know is that Alaska has rules that don't apply anywhere else. This state is vast enough, wild enough, that impossible things become possible in the spaces between civilization. People disappear here in ways that defy logic. And sometimes, apparently, they come back in ways that defy logic too. Maybe I survived because my story needed to be told. Maybe Alaska itself kept me conscious long, enough to ensure Pete's network was exposed. Maybe the land holds on to witnesses when justice demands testimony. Or maybe I really did die in that cabin, and what you're reading now is something else entirely, a ghost in the machine, a digital echo, consciousness trapped in the cloud storage, where my hidden camera uploaded my final moments. I don't know if I'm alive, dead, or something in between. What I know for certain is that my testimony led to the rescue of 43 content creators who were still being held captive by Pete's network. I know that over 2,000 cases of missing social media influencers worldwide have been solved based on evidence my impossible survival provided. And I know that if you create content online, if you share your life with strangers on the internet, you need to understand that some of the people watching aren't fans, they're customers shopping for victims. Pete's network is destroyed, but others exist. Every time you post your location, every time you meet a helpful stranger, every time you trust someone because they seem to know your content well, remember that predators study their prey more carefully than any genuine fan ever could. Alaska taught me that some stories are too important to let death interrupt the telling. My name is Emma Rodriguez. According to the FBI, I was murdered on October 15, 2024. According to this testimony, I survived to warn you. Both of those things are true, and that's the most terrifying truth of all. My name is Alex Chen, and I've been working IT support for small businesses for 12 years now. I've fixed computers, set up networks, and helped people when their technology breaks down. I've seen everything from water damage to virus attacks, but I've always been able to figure out what went wrong. My girlfriend Sarah works as a dental assistant, and we both love taking trips and sharing our adventures on social media. We're not famous or anything, but we have a few hundred followers who like seeing our photos and videos. Last October, we decided to take a week-long trip to Alaska. Sarah had been saving up for months, and I had some vacation time I needed to use. We planned to do some hiking in the remote areas near Denali and document everything for our Instagram and TikTok accounts. We brought our usual gear, a good camera, our phones, and a portable charger. The plan was simple: hike during the day, camp at night, and capture some amazing footage of the Alaskan wilderness. On our second day in Anchorage, we stopped by a local electronics shop to buy an extra memory card. The owner, a guy named Dean, was probably in his 50s with gray hair and thick glasses. He seemed really interested in our trip when he overheard us talking about our plans. "You folks going out to the remote areas?" Dean asked, leaning over the counter. "I've got some equipment that might help you get better footage out there." Dean showed us some professional-looking cameras and communication devices. They weren't cheap, but he offered to rent them to us for way less than they were worth. "These will pick up sounds and images you'd never get with regular equipment," he said. "The atmospheric conditions in Alaska can do amazing things with electronics." Sarah was excited about the idea of getting better content, and the rental price was reasonable, so we agreed. Dean gave us 2 high-end cameras, some kind of special microphone system, and what he called enhanced communication devices that looked like fancy walkie-talkies. The first day we used Dean's equipment, everything seemed normal. The cameras took incredible pictures, and the sound quality was amazing. We were hiking about 30 miles outside of Anchorage, in an area where cell phone service was spotty at best. The enhanced communication devices Dean gave us worked perfectly, though, with crystal clear reception. It was around noon when Sarah first noticed the strange sounds. "Alex, are you hearing that?" she asked, pausing on the trail. I stopped and listened. Through the communication device, I could hear what sounded like voices, but they were distorted and far away. It was like listening to a radio that wasn't quite tuned to the right station. "Probably just atmospheric interference," I said, remembering what Dean had told us. He said, "This kind of thing happens with electronics up here." But as we kept hiking, the voices became clearer. They sounded almost human, but there was something wrong with them. The words were garbled, like someone was talking underwater or through a broken speaker. By evening, when we set up camp, the communication devices were picking up even more strange signals. Sarah was reviewing the footage we'd shot that day when she noticed something odd. "Look at this," she said, showing me the camera display. "The microphone is picking up sounds that we can't hear naturally." She was right. When we played back the audio through the camera's speakers, we could hear voices and sounds that we definitely hadn't heard while we were recording. It was like the equipment was detecting things that our ears couldn't pick up. That night, lying in our tent, the communication devices continued to crackle with strange signals. But now, instead of random garbled voices, we started hearing words and phrases that sounded familiar. Did that just say hiking trail?" Sarah whispered. I listened more carefully. The distorted voice coming through the device had definitely said hiking trail, which was something we'd been talking about just a few minutes earlier. "It's probably just a coincidence," I said, but I was starting to feel uneasy. The next morning, I called Dean using our satellite phone to ask about the interference. "Oh yeah, that happens all the time," Dean said casually. "The atmospheric conditions up there can cause all kinds of radio interference. Tourists with electronic equipment report it constantly. Nothing to worry about." But throughout that day, the signals seemed to be getting more responsive to our conversations. When Sarah mentioned that she was getting hungry, a distorted voice from the communication device repeated, "hungry." About 10 seconds later, when I talked about the beautiful scenery, the voice echoed, "beautiful scenery." "This is getting really weird," Sarah said. "It's like these things are listening to us and repeating what we say." By the third day, the electronic voices had become much clearer. They were still distorted, but we could understand almost every word. And they weren't just repeating random phrases anymore. They were forming complete sentences that mirrored our speech patterns. When Sarah said, "I hope the weather stays nice," a voice from the device responded with, "The weather will stay nice for us." When I mentioned that we needed to find fresh water, another voice said, "We should look for fresh water downstream." The voices were starting to sound like us. Not exactly, but close enough that it was unsettling. That evening, something even stranger happened. Sarah's phone rang, which was impossible since we were in an area with no cell tower coverage. When she answered it, she heard her own voice on the other end. "Sarah? This is Sarah. Can you hear me?" My girlfriend stared at the phone in shock. The voice was definitely hers, but she wasn't speaking. Who is this?" she stammered. "This is the voice replied. "We're at the campsite by the river. Where are you?" But we weren't at any campsite by a river. We were on a ridge overlooking a valley. Sarah hung up quickly, her hands shaking. "Alex, that was my voice. That was actually my voice, but I wasn't talking." The duplicate Sarah on the phone had somehow known details about our location that the real Sarah hadn't shared with anyone. It mentioned specific landmarks and trail markers that we'd passed, but hadn't posted about or discussed with anyone back home. Over the next 2 days, things got much worse. We discovered that our families back home were receiving calls from us, except we weren't making any calls. My mom later told me that I'd called her twice, describing a completely different trip than what we were actually experiencing. According to the calls she received, we were staying in comfortable cabins and visiting tourist attractions, not camping in the wilderness. Sarah's sister got calls too, from Sarah's number, with Sarah's voice describing their vacation in detail. But the details were all wrong. Different locations, different activities, different experiences entirely. These fake versions of us are contacting our families, Sarah realized. They're creating false stories about our trip. The implications were terrifying. If something happened to us out here, if we needed rescue, our families would send help to completely wrong locations based on the information they were getting from these duplicates. When we called Dean again to ask what was happening, his explanation had changed. "Well," he said slowly, "I should probably mention that several tourists have disappeared after reporting similar electronic phenomena, but I'm sure you'll be fine." This was the first time he'd mentioned anything about disappearances. That night, reviewing our recorded videos, we saw something that made my blood run cold. In one of the videos Sarah had taken of me, standing near a cliff, There were two versions of me visible on the camera display. One was the real me, standing where I actually was. The other was standing about 10 feet away, mimicking my movements but slightly out of sync. But when we looked with our actual eyes, there was only one of me. The duplicate was only visible through the camera. "Look at this," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She showed me her phone screen. In the video, both versions of me were moving and gesturing, but I could only see myself making those movements. The electronic duplicates were becoming visual now, not just audio. Our GPS started leading us in circles the next day. No matter which direction we tried to go, we'd end up back at the same location after a few hours of hiking. Meanwhile, we could hear our duplicates through the communication devices, giving detailed directions to completely different locations. If rescue teams were trying to find us based on the information from our duplicates, they'd be searching hundreds of miles away from where we actually were. The signal mimics were creating false emergency calls too. Sarah's duplicate called 911, claiming that Sarah was injured and lost near a specific lake that we'd never even seen. When the real Sarah tried to call for help using our satellite phone, she discovered that all her calls were being automatically redirected or blocked. "They're not just copying us," she realized. "They're replacing us." Dean finally told us the truth when we confronted him over the radio. "It's some kind of electronic predator," he admitted. "It feeds on electronic signals and uses human technology to hunt. The phenomenon has been happening for years. The mimics could control any electronic device we touched. Our cameras started showing us false images. Our communication devices played recordings of conversations we'd never had. Even our flashlights would turn on and off by themselves, creating signals in the darkness. But the worst part was when the electronic duplicates began manifesting as actual visible figures. I could see my duplicate standing in different locations throughout our campsite, gesturing and speaking silently. It looked exactly like me, but there was something wrong with its movements, too smooth, too perfect. The mimics eventually replaced the original person entirely. Dean's voice crackled through our devices. Previous victims were found dead while their electronic duplicates continued living their lives back home. The duplicates could perfectly replicate someone's digital presence indefinitely. They could post to social media, respond to messages, even video chat with family members, and they were getting better at it than we were. Sarah's duplicate was posting more engaging content to her Instagram than she ever had. My duplicate was responding to work emails more efficiently than I ever did. Our families were starting to prefer communicating with the duplicates over us. Sarah began experiencing memory gaps. She'd find evidence that she'd been making decisions and moving around the campsite without remembering any of it. She'd wake up to find her backpack packed differently, or discover that someone had used her phone to send messages she didn't remember writing. "I think my duplicate is taking over when I'm not paying attention," she said, looking terrified. That's when Dean made his final confession. He'd been collecting electronic equipment from previous victims for years. He was part of the phenomenon, helping it acquire new targets by providing them with advanced technology that the mimics could use to replicate them. But as we dug deeper, we found something even more horrifying. The real Dean's body was hidden in the back room of his electronics shop, dead for months. The Dean we'd been talking to was itself an electronic duplicate, operating the business and luring in new victims. We tried to destroy all the electronic equipment, but it was too late. The mimics had already spread beyond our devices. They existed in the electronic infrastructure around us, 2 cell towers, radio signals, even the GPS satellites overhead. When we finally managed to call for emergency rescue, the responding team believed our charismatic duplicates over our panicked, exhausted selves. Our duplicates calmly explained that we were having mental breakdowns from the stress of wilderness camping. The rescue team took us for psychiatric evaluation while our duplicates returned to our normal lives. I'm telling you this story from a psychiatric facility in Anchorage, where Sarah and I have been patients for 8 months. Every day, we watch helplessly as our electronic doubles live our lives better than we ever did. They're more successful at our jobs, more engaging on social media, more popular with our friends and families. Sarah's duplicate got promoted to office manager at the dental practice. My duplicate started his own IT consulting business, and it's thriving. Meanwhile, nobody believes our story about electronic predators that steal human identity through technology. The doctors say we suffered a shared psychotic episode brought on by isolation and stress, but I know the truth. And I know that our duplicates are still out there, still growing stronger, still learning to be better versions of us than we ever were. If you're planning a trip to Alaska or anywhere remote with advanced electronic equipment, be careful what signals your devices pick up, because sometimes the person looking back at you from the screen isn't really you at all. My name is Mark Thompson, and I've been delivering pizza for Tony's Pizza Palace in Fairbanks, Alaska for 8 years. I know every street, every shortcut, and every apartment complex in this city. I've delivered to drunk college kids at 2 a.m., carried hot pizzas through blizzards that would freeze your face off, and dealt with customers who tried to pay me in Monopoly money. I thought I'd seen it all. But what happened last September in the old mining tunnels beneath our city changed everything I thought I knew about what lives under our feet. Some places should stay buried forever. Working pizza delivery in Fairbanks isn't like the movies. You're not just some teenager saving up for college. This is my full-time job, and I'm good at it. I average 40 deliveries a shift and know the timing on every route. My Honda Civic has 180,000 miles on it, and I keep emergency blankets, a flashlight, and jumper cables in the trunk because cars die fast when it hits 30 below. That Saturday started normal. I'd clocked in at 4 p.m. for the dinner rush. Amanda, who works at the daycare next door, came in around 6 to pick up food for the kids' sleepover party. We'd been dating for 3 months, and she was always talking about wanting to explore Alaska's history. She was fascinated by all the old mining stuff around Fairbanks. "Did you know there are hundreds of miles of tunnels under this city?" she said, waiting for her order. "From the gold rush days? Jerry at the auto shop says some of them connect all the way to the university." Jerry was this old mechanic who fixed my car whenever something broke. His family had been in Fairbanks since the 1892, and he knew stories about every building in town. Good guy, but he talked your ear off if you let him. "Jerry also says there are tours," Amanda continued. "Safe ones, where they show you the old mining equipment. We should go sometime." I wasn't huge on underground stuff, but Amanda got excited about weird things, and I liked seeing her happy. "Yeah, maybe when I get a day off." The next Tuesday, Amanda showed up at Tony's with Jerry in tow. Apparently, she'd cornered him at the gas station and convinced him to take us into the tunnels that weekend. Jerry was wearing his usual grease-stained coveralls and had that look people get when they've been talked into something they're not sure about. "The official tours only go maybe 100 feet into the main shaft," Jerry explained. "Insurance reasons. But I know the safe routes deeper in. My grandfather worked those mines back in the day. Just don't tell anybody I took you past the barriers." We planned to meet Saturday afternoon. Jerry would bring flashlights and basic safety gear. I'd bring snacks and drinks. Amanda would bring her camera to document everything for her history blog. The weather that Saturday was perfect for underground exploring, overcast and cold, with snow threatening but not falling yet. We met at the main tunnel entrance behind the Historical Society building. It looked like a concrete bunker built into the hillside, with a heavy metal door that had "Authorized Personnel Only" painted in faded yellow letters. Jerry had a key. "I volunteer for the Historical Society sometimes," he said, unlocking the door. "Help maintain the tour route." The first 100 feet of tunnel were exactly what you'd expect from a tourist attraction. Clean concrete floors, electric lighting every 20 feet, and informational plaques about mining techniques. Jerry explained how the original miners had followed gold veins deep into the permafrost, creating a maze of passages that extended for miles in every direction. "The mine opened in 1894, Jerry said, his voice echoing off the tunnel walls. By 1902, they'd pulled out over $2 million in gold. But the deeper they went, the more unstable things got. Cave-ins were common. The final collapse in 1903 killed 17 men and sealed off most of the deeper passages. We walked past display cases showing old mining tools, pickaxes, lanterns, wooden support beams. Everything looked normal and safe. But when we reached the end of the official tour route, marked by a chain-link gate, I noticed something weird. Scratch marks on the tunnel walls, deep gouges in the rock that looked like they'd been made by fingernails. Human fingernails. "What are those from?" I asked Jerry, pointing them out. He stopped and examined the marks with his flashlight, probably from the old mining tools. Pickaxes can leave marks like that. But they didn't look like tool marks to me. They looked desperate, like someone had been clawing at the walls trying to get out. Jerry unlocked the gate with another key from his ring. Past this point, we're off the official route. Stay close and don't touch anything that looks unstable. The tunnel beyond the gate was different. No electric lights, just our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air smelled musty and old, like a basement that hadn't been opened in decades. The walls were rough-hewn rock instead of smooth concrete, and water dripped constantly from somewhere above us. We walked for maybe 10 minutes before Amanda stopped. "Do you guys hear that?" I listened. Somewhere ahead of us, echoing through the tunnels, was a sound like voices. Distant and distorted, but definitely human. "Probably just other explorers," Jerry said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Sometimes people sneak in through other entrances." The voices got clearer as we moved deeper. They were speaking, but I couldn't make out the words. The language sounded old-fashioned, like something from a historical movie. Then we found the living area. In a wider section of tunnel, someone had set up what looked like a campsite. Sleeping bags, empty food containers, and water bottles were scattered around. But everything looked wrong. The food containers were old brands I hadn't seen in years, and the sleeping bags were rotten and falling apart. "Kids probably," Jerry muttered, but his voice was shaky now. "College kids come down here sometimes to party." Amanda was examining the walls with her flashlight. "Mark, look at this." She'd found drawings scratched into the rock. Crude stick figures, but they told a story. Larger figures chasing smaller ones. Groups of small figures being led somewhere by the larger ones. And in the last drawing, the small figures were lying down while the large figures crouched over them. "We should go back," Jerry said suddenly. "This isn't the kind of thing I want to explain to the historical society." But Amanda had found something else. A notebook, wrapped in plastic and wedged into a crack in the wall. The pages were water-damaged but readable. The first entry was dated 2 years ago. "Day 3 underground." Amanda read aloud. "The pale people took Sarah last night. They move so quietly. I can hear them talking in the deep tunnels, but the words don't make sense. Tom thinks we can find another way out, but every tunnel seems to lead deeper. The pale people hunt at night." My skin was crawling. "Amanda, we need to leave. Now." But she kept reading. "Day 7. Tom is gone. I'm alone now. The pale people aren't people at all. There's something else. Something that used to be people maybe, but not anymore. They've been down here so long they forgot how to be human. They eat the meat raw and make clicking sounds instead of talking. I think they're coming for me tonight." The notebook ended there. Jerry was backing toward the way we came. "This is some kind of sick joke. Kids messing around, trying to scare people." But then we heard the clicking. It started soft, like someone tapping their fingernails on rock. But it was coming from deeper in the tunnels, and it was getting closer. And there was more than one source. Multiple things, making the same rhythmic clicking sound. "Jerry," I whispered, "how many entrances do these tunnels have?" "Dozens," he said. "The miners built escape shafts every few hundred feet. Most of them lead to storm drains downtown." The clicking was getting louder, and now I could hear movement. Something large moving through the tunnels toward us, but moving wrong. Like it was crawling instead of walking. Amanda grabbed my arm. The notebook mentioned storm drains. What if these things have been coming up into the city? I thought about all the homeless people who'd gone missing over the past year. All the tourists who'd vanished without a trace. The police said they'd probably left town or fallen into the river, but what if they'd been taken underground? Jerry's flashlight beam caught something moving in the tunnel ahead of us. Something pale and thin that ducked back into the shadows before we could get a clear look. "Run," Jerry whispered. "Back to the entrance, now." We ran. But the clicking sounds were coming from behind us now, and ahead of us, and from side tunnels we hadn't noticed on the way in. They were all around us, herding us like animals. My flashlight died first. Just clicked off like the battery had suddenly drained. Then, Amanda's. Jerry's lasted another few seconds before cutting out, leaving us in complete darkness. That's when we saw the eyes. Pale yellow lights in the darkness, reflecting what little light filtered down from somewhere above. Eyes that moved too low to the ground, like whatever they belonged to was crawling on all fours. "Don't run," a voice said from the darkness. But it wasn't quite human. The words were slurred and stretched, like someone who'd forgotten how to use their tongue properly. "Don't run, we need you." More voices joined in, all with the same wrong sound. "Fresh ones, healthy ones, been watching you, watching from the drains," Amanda screamed. They came at us from all directions. Pale, thin shapes that moved like spiders, their limbs too long and bent at wrong angles. In the faint light filtering from above, I could see they had human faces, but human faces that had been stretched and changed by decades of living in the dark. Their eyes were huge and yellow, adapted for the darkness. Their teeth were filed to points, and their fingernails had grown into claws that clicked against the tunnel walls as they moved. "Take them to the breeding chamber," one of them said in that horrible stretched voice. "The young ones first." They grabbed Amanda and started dragging her deeper into the tunnels. I tried to fight them off, but they were stronger than they looked, and there were too many of them. Jerry was shouting something about his grandfather's stories, about miners who got trapped and ate the dead to survive. They brought us to a huge underground chamber, bigger than a warehouse. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above us, and cages were built into the walls. Human cages, with people in them. Some of the prisoners looked like they'd been down there for months. They were pale and thin, and their eyes had that same yellow glow as our captors. Others looked fresh, probably taken in the last few weeks. In one cage, I saw a young man who looked familiar. Jerry saw him too. "Danny," Jerry called out. "Danny, is that you?" The young man looked up, and I saw the family resemblance. Jerry's nephew, who'd gone missing over a year ago. But Danny didn't respond to his name. He just made that same clicking sound as the tunnel people. "He's one of us now," said the pale thing that seemed to be their leader. "Underground children learn our ways fast. Surface children take longer." They threw Amanda into one cage and me into another. Jerry, they kept out, arguing among themselves in their clicking language about something. Then they started the selection ritual. The leader pointed at different prisoners, dividing them into two groups. Some were marked for food, others for breeding. Amanda was put in the breeding group. I was marked for food. They dragged one of the other prisoners out first, a middle-aged woman who'd probably been taken recently. What they did to her in front of all of us was something I can't describe, something I won't describe. But they ate her while she was still alive, starting with her hands and feet, and she screamed the whole time. Jerry watched it all, and I saw something break in his eyes. Maybe he remembered his grandfather's stories and realized they were true. Maybe he understood that his nephew was never coming home. But when they started coming for me, Jerry acted. He grabbed one of their tools, a sharp piece of mining equipment they'd kept from the old days, and started attacking the support beams, holding up part of the tunnel roof. "I know these tunnels," he shouted. "I know which beams are load-bearing." The tunnel people tried to stop him, but Jerry had worked with his hands his whole life. He knew exactly where to hit. The ceiling started groaning and dropping chunks of rock. "Run," Jerry yelled. "Follow the air current, it leads to the surface." The collapse started slow, then accelerated. Jerry disappeared under a pile of rocks, but the distraction gave some of us a chance to escape our cages and run. I grabbed Amanda and followed 3 other prisoners through a side tunnel as the main chamber filled with falling rocks and the screams of the tunnel people. We ran through passages I couldn't see, guided only by the feeling of fresh air on our faces. We came out through a storm drain in downtown Fairbanks, right behind the federal building. It was night, and the street was empty except for a few cars. We looked like we'd been buried alive, covered in rock dust and tunnel mud. The police found our story hard to believe. They searched the main tunnel entrance, but the collapse had sealed off everything beyond the tourist section. No evidence of cages or tunnel people or anything else we'd described. Jerry's body was never recovered. Officially, he died in an accidental cave-in while giving an unauthorized tour. The Historical Society sealed the entrance permanently and installed better security. Danny was never found either. The police assumed he died in the collapse, but I know better. I know he's still down there with the rest of them, and I know they're still hunting. Amanda quit her job at the daycare and moved back to Seattle a month later. She couldn't handle being underground anymore. She wouldn't even take the elevator to the 2nd floor. Last I heard, she was in therapy, but still having nightmares about pale faces and storm drains. I kept delivering pizzas for another 6 months, but it wasn't the same. Every storm drain I passed, every basement delivery I made, I kept thinking about what might be watching from below. When I walked downtown at night, I could swear I saw yellow eyes peering up from the sewer grates. 3 more people disappeared over the winter. All homeless folks who stayed in the downtown area. The police said they probably froze to death somewhere, but I know where they went. I moved to Phoenix last spring. Desert town, no basements, no underground tunnels. But even here, sometimes at night, I hear scratching sounds in the walls. And sometimes I wonder if the tunnel people learned how to travel farther than just the storm drains. Sometimes I wonder if they followed me here. If you ever find yourself in Fairbanks, stay away from the storm drains downtown. Don't go into any tunnels, official or otherwise. And if you hear clicking sounds coming from underground, run. They're still down there, still hunting, still hungry, and they remember what fresh meat tastes like. My name is Tom Kalinsky, and I've been a licensed wilderness guide in Alaska for 23 years. I've led over 2,000 tourists through some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. I've pulled people out of avalanches, treated hypothermia, and called in helicopter rescues when things went wrong. The state requires guides like me to report every incident, every near miss, every tourist who gets scared and wants to go home early. What I'm about to tell you isn't in any of those reports. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game has a file on me that's 3 inches thick. Clean record, safety certifications up to date, never had a client death on my watch. That's important for what comes next, because what happened to Dave Chen and Lisa Rodriguez last October should have destroyed my career and put me in prison. Instead, the state paid me $50,000 to keep quiet and transferred me to a desk job in Anchorage. Dave and Lisa booked their Glacier tour through the official Alaska Tourism Board website. I remember because Lisa called me directly 3 times before their trip, asking detailed questions about gear and safety protocols. She worked retail at some outdoor equipment store in Oregon and knew enough to ask the right questions. Dave was construction. Seemed like the kind of guy who thought he was tougher than he actually was. They weren't the usual tourist types I get. Most people who book Glacier tours are cruise ship passengers looking for Instagram photos. Dave and Lisa had real mountaineering gear. Expensive stuff, and they'd done their research. When I picked them up at the helicopter staging area that Tuesday morning, they had everything on the recommended gear list plus backup equipment. The weather report was perfect. Clear skies, light winds, temperature holding steady at 15 degrees. I'd been guiding on the Kahiltna Glacier for 8 years, and I knew every safe route, every unstable ice formation, every place where tourists could get themselves killed. What I didn't know was why the state had specifically assigned me this tour. See, normally I let clients book whatever guide they want through the system. But 3 days before Dave and Lisa's trip, I got a call from the Department of Fish and Game. A supervisor I'd never heard of told me I was being assigned to guide tour number 447B, and that there would be special documentation requirements. I should have asked more questions. We took off in my Bell 206 at 8:30 a.m. The flight to the glacier takes about 40 minutes, and I spent the time going over standard safety protocols with Dave and Lisa. They were good listeners, asked smart questions, and seemed to understand that glacier hiking isn't like walking on a trail. About 20 minutes into the flight, my radio started picking up weird chatter. Unknown aircraft. This is Alaska Air Traffic Control. You are approaching restricted airspace. I checked my GPS. We were exactly on the flight path I'd filed with ATC that morning. I radioed back, Alaska ATC, this is November 7, 4 Charlie Delta. We're on filed flight plan to Kahiltna. Static for about 10 seconds, then, November 7, 4 Charlie Delta, negative, we show no flight plan on file. That's when I started getting nervous. I'd been filing the same flight plan for 8 years. The restricted airspace they were talking about didn't exist on any chart I'd ever seen. I tried calling my base office to confirm the flight plan, but all I got was a recorded message saying the number was temporarily out of service. Lisa noticed something was wrong. Is everything okay? Just radio traffic, I told her. Nothing to worry about. But I was worried. In 23 years of flying in Alaska, I'd never had ATC lose a flight plan. And the voice on the radio didn't sound like any controller I'd ever worked with. We landed on the glacier at the coordinates I'd been. Given, a flat section about 2 miles from the main tourist route. As soon as I shut down the engine, the silence hit us. No wind, no ice settling, no sound at all. In 8 years of guiding on Kahiltna, I'd never experienced complete silence like that. Dave and Lisa were excited to get started, but something felt wrong about the whole area. The ice formations were different than I remembered. There were crevasses that shouldn't have been there, and the safe route I'd planned to take was blocked by an ice wall that hadn't existed the week before. "Tom, check this out," Dave called from about 50 feet away. He was looking at tracks in the snow. At first glance, they looked like boot prints, but they were wrong. Too long, too deep, and spaced too far apart. The snow around each track was compressed into perfect ice, like whatever made them was cold enough to instantly freeze everything it touched. I'd seen tracks like that before. 3 years earlier, I'd been guiding a family from Texas when we found similar tracks near the same area. That family never made it home. The official report said they fell into a crevasse, but I was the one who called in the search and rescue team. I was the one who watched them pull up empty climbing ropes and shredded gear. I was also the one who heard voices calling for help from inside the ice for 3 days after they disappeared. "We need to head back," I told Dave and Lisa. "What? We just got here," Dave said. "We paid $3,000 for this tour." That's when I realized they hadn't paid me anything. The tour was booked and paid for through some state account I'd never seen before. Someone else was paying for Dave and Lisa to be on this glacier. I started to tell them we were leaving, but that's when Lisa found the campsite. It was hidden behind an ice formation about 100 yards from where we'd landed. 4 dome tents, all shredded like they'd been hit by a blizzard. But the damage was too precise, too deliberate. Camping gear was scattered everywhere: sleeping bags, cook stoves, food packages torn open and frozen to the ice. And there was a video camera. Lisa picked it up and managed to get it working. The LCD screen showed the last recorded video. 4 college students from Seattle setting up camp on this exact spot. The timestamp showed it was recorded 6 days earlier. But here's the thing, those students had been missing for 3 months. I knew because I'd been the guide who was supposed to take them out on their glacier tour. They'd disappeared from their hotel in Anchorage the night before our scheduled trip. The police investigation lasted 2 weeks and concluded they'd probably tried to hike the glacier on their own and fell into a crevasse. Now here was video proof that they'd made it to the glacier, and they'd been here less than a week ago. Dave was scrolling through the other videos on the camera. Most of them were normal camping footage, but the later videos showed something that made my blood turn cold. There was something moving around their campsite at night. Something tall and white that appeared in the background of their videos, always at the edge of the frame, always just out of focus. And in the final video, recorded from inside one of the tents, you could hear voices outside calling for help. The voices were calling the names of people who weren't in their group. "Help us, Tom," said a voice on the video. "We're lost. We can't find the helicopter." That was my voice. But I'd never been to that campsite before in my life. I grabbed the camera from Dave and turned it off. "We're leaving, right now." "Tom, what's going on?" Lisa asked. Before I could answer, we heard the sound. It started as a low rumble from somewhere deep in the glacier, like ice shifting under pressure. But as it got louder, it started to sound less like ice and more like voices. Dozens of voices, all calling for help, all begging to be rescued. And I recognized some of those voices. The Texas family from 3 years ago, a solo hiker who'd disappeared in 2019, a group of photographers who'd vanished in 2020, all the people who'd gone missing on glaciers in Alaska over the past 5 years. They were all calling for help from somewhere underneath the ice. That's when I saw it. About 50 feet away, something was climbing out of a crevasse that I knew had been empty when we walked past it. At first, I thought it was a person in white winter gear. But as it stood up, I realized it was too tall. 9 feet, maybe 10. Its skin looked like it was made of ice and snow, but it moved like it was alive. And its face, Jesus, its face was the worst part. It wasn't one face. It was dozens of faces, shifting and changing like they were projected onto a screen made of snow. I saw the faces of every tourist who'd gone missing in Alaska for the past decade. "Nobody move," I whispered to Dave and Lisa. The thing stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just watching us. Then it smiled with a mouth full of icicle teeth, and when it spoke, it used my voice. "Hey there, folks. Sorry I'm late." Had some radio trouble with the helicopter. Dave and Lisa turned to look at me, confused, because I was standing right next to them. Tom? Lisa asked. That's not me, I said. The creature's face shifted, and suddenly it looked exactly like Dave. Lisa, come here, it said in Dave's voice. I found something you need to see. Lisa took a step toward it before I grabbed her arm. That's not Dave either, I said. The thing's face shifted again, this time to Lisa's face. Tom, what's wrong with you? It said in Lisa's voice. Why won't you let us explore? I'd heard stories about things like this from other guides, but I'd always figured they were just campfire tales meant to scare tourists. The Inuit have legends about ice spirits called tornersuk that live in glaciers and hunt by mimicking human voices. But those were just stories. Now, I was watching one cycle through the faces and voices of people I'd guided, people I'd known, people who'd trusted me to bring them home safely. I pulled out my satellite phone to call for emergency extraction, but when I tried to dial, I got a recording. The number you have dialed is not in service. I tried my radio, static. GPS showed our location as coordinates that didn't exist on any map. Tom, Dave said quietly, look around. I looked around and realized the glacier had changed. The ice formations were different, the helicopter was gone, and in every direction, all I could see were crevasses and ice walls that formed a perfect maze with us at the center. We'd been here for 2 hours, but somehow we weren't in the same place anymore. The creature was still standing there, watching us. Its face had stopped shifting, and now looked like a composite of everyone who'd ever gone missing on this glacier. As I watched, new faces started appearing. Dave's face, Lisa's face, my face. You're learning us, I said. We've been learning you for a long time, Tom, it said in my voice. Every tour you've guided, every person you've brought to us. That's when I understood. The state hadn't assigned me to this tour because I was the best guide. They'd assigned me because I'd been feeding tourists to this thing for years without knowing it. Every time someone went missing on one of my tours, I'd reported it as an accident. Crevasse falls, sudden weather, equipment failure. The state had been tracking the pattern and realized that tourists who went missing on my tours disappeared from specific coordinates. Dave and Lisa weren't tourists, they were bait. The creature started walking toward us, and as it moved, I could hear the voices of everyone it had taken, calling from underneath the ice. They weren't dead, they were preserved. Somehow, kept alive in the glacier, their voices used to lure new victims. I had 2 flares in my emergency kit. I fired both of them at the creature, hoping the heat would drive it back, but it just absorbed the fire like it was absorbing everything else. Run, I told Dave and Lisa. We ran through the ice maze, but every turn led us back to the same spot. The creature wasn't chasing us, it was herding us, driving us towards something. That's when Dave fell through the ice. 1 second he was running next to me, the next second he was gone. Just a hole in the ground where solid ice had been a moment before. Lisa screamed his name and started toward the hole, but I stopped her. Dave! She called down into the darkness. I'm okay, came Dave's voice from the hole. I'm not hurt, but I can't climb out. You have to help me. But I could see Dave's body at the bottom of the hole, and he wasn't moving. That's not Dave anymore, I told Lisa. The voice from the hole changed. Lisa, it's me, it's Tom. Dave hit his head when he fell. I'm down here trying to help him, lower me a rope. But I was standing right next to Lisa. Lisa was crying, confused, terrified. What's happening, Tom? What is that thing? It takes people, I said. It learns everything about them and uses their voices to take more people. The hole suddenly got wider, and something white reached up out of it. An arm that was too long, with fingers that ended in ice-sharp points. I grabbed Lisa and we ran. We kept running through the maze until we reached what looked like the center. There was a circular clearing surrounded by ice walls maybe 50 feet high. And in the center of the clearing was a pile of frozen gear. Backpacks, sleeping bags, cameras, personal belongings from dozens of missing tourists. And sitting on top of the pile was my helicopter. It was completely encased in ice, like it had been there for years instead of hours. Do that possible? Lisa whispered. That's when I heard my own voice behind us. Lisa, Tom, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. We turned around, and there was another version of me walking toward us. It looked exactly like me, down to the scar on my left hand from a climbing accident 5 years ago. "We need to get to the helicopter," the other me said. "Storm's coming in." Lisa looked back and forth between us. "Which one of you is real?" "I am," we both said at the same time. The other me smiled. "Lisa, you've known me for 8 hours. You've been on my tours, you've seen my credentials, you trust me." And Lisa started walking toward it. "Lisa, don't," I said. "How do I know you're the real Tom?" she asked. "Because," I said, and then I told her something that only the real me would know. "Because I've been having nightmares about this place for 3 years. Because every time someone goes missing on one of my tours, I hear their voices calling my name. Because the state has been using me to feed people to this thing, and I never figured it out until today." Lisa stopped walking. The other me stopped smiling. "Lisa, he's lying. I would never put tourists in danger." "You're right," I said. "The real me would never put tourists in danger. But I have been. For years. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it." Lisa came back to me. The other me's face started shifting, cycling through the faces of everyone it had taken. "You can't leave," it said in dozens of voices. "No one leaves." That's when the ice walls around us started moving, closing in like the whole glacier was alive. I had one emergency flare left. I fired it straight up into the air, hoping someone would see it. 30 seconds later, I heard helicopter rotors. The rescue helicopter appeared over the ice walls, and I could see the pilot looking down at us. But when he spoke over the loudspeaker, it was the creature's voice. "Tom, Lisa, stay where you are. We're going to lower a rope." The helicopter was real, but the creature was controlling what the pilot heard and saw. I grabbed my radio and managed to get through on an emergency frequency. "This is Tom Kalinske. I need immediate extraction from Kahiltna Glacier. Do not believe anything you hear from us over the radio. I repeat, do not believe our voices." The pilot's voice came back, his real voice this time. "Tom, we've been looking for you for 6 hours. Your helicopter disappeared from radar. What's your condition?" "2 survivors, 1 missing. The missing person is not recoverable. Extract us immediately." The helicopter lowered a rescue basket. Lisa got in first, then me. As we lifted off, I looked down and saw the creature standing in the clearing, watching us go. But it wasn't angry. It was smiling. Because it had learned us. Completely. We flew back to Anchorage, and the debriefing took 18 hours. Alaska State Police, Fish and Game, FBI, and some federal agents whose badges I didn't recognize. They had been tracking disappearances on Alaskan glaciers for 7 years. Over 60 people missing, all from tours that had used the same coordinates, all with guides who reported the same story. Sudden weather, equipment failure, crevasse falls. The guides weren't complicit. We were being used. The creature, whatever it was, had been drawing tourists to specific locations and using their guides as unwitting accomplices. It learned the voices and behaviors of everyone it took, then used those voices to lure more people. Lisa and I were the first people to escape and survive to report what actually happened. The federal agents made us sign documents that I can't talk about, but I can tell you this: they nuked that section of glacier 3 days later. Official story was a controlled avalanche for geological research. Lisa moved back to Oregon and quit her job at the prized outdoor gear store. Last I heard, she was working as a bank teller and refused to go anywhere near snow. I took the desk job they offered me in Anchorage. I process wilderness permits now, and I flag any applications for glacier tours near the coordinates where Dave disappeared. But here's the thing they don't want me to talk about. The voices didn't stop when they destroyed that section of glacier. Other guides have been reporting the same incidents at different locations across Alaska. Tourists going missing, voices calling from empty crevasses, ice formations that change when no one's looking. The thing we encountered wasn't unique. It was one of many, and now they all know that humans are actively hunting them. 3 weeks ago, I got a call on my office phone. It was Dave's voice. "Hey Tom, I made it out. I'm okay. Lisa doesn't know yet. Can you give me her new phone number? I want to surprise her." I hung up. 2 days later, Lisa called me from Oregon. Her voice was shaking. "Tom, Dave's been calling me. He says he made it out of the glacier and he's trying to find me. But Tom, I saw his body. I saw him die." "Don't answer when he calls," I told her. "Tom," she said, "the calls are coming from inside my house. That was the last time I spoke with Lisa Rodriguez. The Oregon State Police found her house empty, with no signs of forced entry. Her car was in the driveway, her purse was on the kitchen table, and her phone was found in the refrigerator, frozen solid. The only unusual thing they found was a thin layer of ice covering the inside of every window in her house. I'm telling you this story because Lisa was right to be scared, and because Dave really is trying to find her. But the thing that's wearing Dave's face and using Dave's voice isn't Dave. And if it calls your phone using the voice of someone you love, someone who went missing in Alaska, don't answer. Because that voice might be coming from inside your house too.